So we have a rock and roll extravaganza of culture on Front Row tonight, with Noddy Holder on the re-release of his cult film Slade In Flame. Stephen, but first... Slade were one of the biggest bands of the 1970s, and in 1975 their manager, following the template set by the Beatles, wanted them to make a feature film. The result, Slade In Flame, was nothing like the feel-good romp of A Hard Day's Night. Despite featuring plenty of the band performing new songs, the original script was rejected and it was rewritten as a dark, cynical story, with Slade playing a fictional band, Flame, rising to prominence and fought over by record executives and gangsters. The film, though well acted, was a critical and commercial failure at the time, given the band's mostly teenage audience, but has built up a cult following over the years. Now, 50 years on, it's being re-released in cinemas and on DVD. I asked lead singer Noddy Holder and the film's director Richard Loncraine where the idea for Slade In Flame came from.
Well, the idea came originally, as far as I know, from our manager. Ever since the band started and we signed with him, Chas Chandler, he was in the Animals, he discovered, managed, produced Jimi Hendrix. But the blueprint for Slade was he wanted to follow the pattern of the Beatles. So once we had hits, then we had number ones. He wanted to do a movie because the Beatles did a movie in their blueprint. So then he came to Richard.
There were this spate of rock and roll films being made at that time. You'd come from factual television, hadn't you?
I worked on Tomorrow's World. Out of Royal College Film School, I went and worked on Tomorrow's World, which is a science show, which was great training. I was such a hustler in those days that I just got the job and got it. And then the first time I remember, I had no idea how to block out a scene. It was really quite frightening.
But it was the same for us. Richard had to teach us. We came into the film, we thought we'd do a take and that'd be it, on to next scene. We didn't realise you'd got to set up again for cameras, lights, for close-ups, and you've got to act the scene, the lines, the props, everything exactly the same as you did in the master shot. We had no idea of the technicalities of movie making at all.
And also it was shot very much on location around places like in Nottingham and Sheffield, is that right? It has this really gritty urban feel. It doesn't look like a glamorous world. It looks very...
It wasn't glamorous to shoot it in those places. We were... doing it by the seat of our pants, really.
We didn't have much money, so we couldn't afford to build
stick within really
budgets.
But
you were a big band at the time. Remind us, where was Slade in your career that this film fitted in with that?
We'd already had 6 number one records. We'd had 12 big hit records, 6 of them being number one. It was, as I said, it was Chas Chandler's idea to do a movie. It was the next step up the ladder for us for internationally.
But it's nothing like the Beatles films. I mean,
no.
A Hard Day's Night is kind of the template. And this film, Slade In Flame, is very much darker. So how deliberate was that?
We didn't want that. We purposely did not want what the audience would expect of a band like us. We were a happy-go-lucky band. They thought they were going to get a comedy romp. That's what they expected.
And that was a commercial mistake we made, wasn't it, really?
Commercially, yeah.
Because your fan base were, 15-year-old, 14-year-old?
Yeah.
And so they didn't want to see the dirty side of the rock and roll business.
They did not. And we took Richard and Andrew Birkin, the writer, we took them to America. They were going to do a month's tour behind the scenes, seeing what a rock and roll band were like behind the scenes. And on the road out there, we told them stories about ourselves and other bands, which they wove into the movie script.
Like what?
And then...
Screaming Lord Sutch, for example.
Screaming Lord Sutch was the coffin scene. That was taken... All the scenes in the movie are taken from real life of different bands.
And
Richard and Andrew had to come home after a fortnight. They had enough of it.
Shock.
They did not realise what it was like.
I should say that the Screaming Lord Sutch scene is when you're in a coffin
Correct.
and you can't get out and it's caught fire.
That's right, that's right.
Basically, what I have in mind is this, that with the right management, we can turn the group into a success.
Do you actually like what we do?
My personal preference really doesn't come into it. Let me put it this way. I don't smoke cigarettes, but I managed to sell a few.
The whole idea that the rock industry is really manipulative, very cynical. The Tom Conti character talks about how he could sell Slade like cigarettes. Richard, how did you approach that world of
I'd worked in advertising, so I knew that fairly well. And it's a bit like Hollywood. Everything you think is bad about it, double it, you're not even close. So I knew the cynicism of the advertising world. And Andrew's a fine writer, and he managed to pack it all in.
Well, there's also a whole gangster element where there's their first manager who doesn't like the fact that this slick new guy's taken over, and there's a kind of Get Carter quality to violence.
That did happen to bands in real life.
Really?
Certainly back in the 60s. I'm not so sure it don't go on now, but certainly back in the 60s it did. We came from small town, council estate. We were governed by small town agents, managers. They wanted to make a quick buck. And then when you move up a ladder and you start getting a record deal, it's just the books get bigger. That's all, but the characters stay the same. And then you have to enter the corporate world, record companies, etc. They want value for money. In our era, the Slade era, our contract, even though we were on a good contract, we had to make at least minimum 1 album a year and 3 singles a year minimum. You don't get that today from many acts. Certainly once you reach the heights.
Yeah. There is that sequence on the train when the band are heading down to London, and I think they're in first class, and they're behaving in a slightly boorish way with the food, and they're shocking other passengers. Was that a deliberate mocking of A Hard Day's Night?
And badly directed, you want to know the truth. I think it's a bit over the top, because I looked at it again recently.
Yeah.
I think it's a good scene, actually, Richard.
Yeah.
It shows a naive band coming from the north down on a train in first class, as you say, being fed food on a train, that we weren't at ease. We were behaving like, in inverted commas, yobbos. The characters in the movie exactly the same.
I take it back. It's a really good scene and extremely well directed.
There's a great moment when you're climbing into a pirate radio station, which looks like some kind of offshore rig. It looks incredibly dangerous.
It was very dangerous, as Dave Hill will tell you. They were quite amazing, mad structures and very lethal. So we didn't have permission. I mean, health and safety was a twinkle in.
That was out the window.
Yeah, Dave Hill was poor Dave. He was very frightened of heights, so getting him up the ladder. But we remember the one thing that happened in real life. Another radio station attacked them with guns.
So when the gun
machine gun
was a real attack.
That was true in the 60s.
In our story, they escape, got into the helicopter, and actually the idea was they got out the other side and hid. But the first time we did it, the helicopter took off, and there were these 4 rock and rollers just crouched there looking very embarrassed. I've still got the shot at home. It's wonderful.
We're giving all the secrets away, aren't we?
Tell me about the music, because you mentioned you'd had all these #1 hits by then. Did you put a Slade spin on Flame? I mean, how did you approach your sound?
If you listen to the whole album for the soundtrack, it's totally different to a normal Slade soundtrack. Because the film era is set in the late 60s, we tried to give it a late 60s sound. The songs were written for the movie. It's probably our best, certainly in our top 3 albums that we ever made. And now people consider it, the songs on there, particularly How Does It Feel, which was the theme tune to the movie. Nobody at the time wanted that out, particularly our management. The record company certainly didn't want it out. The only reason they brought that out as a single was because it was the theme tune to the movie.
How does it feel turning away? How does it feel facing another day? 'Cause years from now there will be new horizons, How does it feel?
Nobody liked it. It was the first record in 5 years that didn't make the top 3. It got to about number 15. Now, everybody thinks it's probably one of the best songs we ever did. But way back then, they thought, this is not Slade. What are Slade up to doing this? They thought exactly about How Does It Feel, exactly what they thought about the movie. What on earth are Slade up to?
Well, tell me about that, because nowadays we'd say it was meta, Slade playing a fictional band. Did you worry about, you mentioned your fans were, average age 15. Did you worry that they might find it puzzling?
Dave, particularly. I remember we went to do Top of the Pops on whatever single we'd got out at that time, 2 days after the movie, and we were down doing the sound check and the sound rehearsal and camera rehearsal in the afternoon. The director of Top of the Pops came down to the sound stage and he said to Dave, he went straight to Dave, he says, Dave, that was a great movie, but it's going to kill your career. And Dave really took that at heart. I didn't. I thought it was a great movie.
Yeah. What did the manager think? Because you mentioned that Chas Chandler had wanted you to do follow the Beatles' trajectory, and I gather there's a moment where he threw one of your cameras in the puddle in fury.
We only had one contretemps, as I recall. We were shooting at night up in North London at an old abandoned garage. And I was setting up a shot separate from everyone else and with a new Panavision camera, which I think were about £250,000 in those days. And suddenly it's grabbed out of my hand and it's Chas. And he's got the camera, and I won't use the word he said, but he said, "I want more close-ups of my boys, you young..." expletive. And then he threw the camera in the puddle.
God, it's like turning into the film.
It was a bit, yes.
Well, it's life imitating art, isn't it, really? And that's what he was like. He did not care. He was tough.
Here, have a look at this. Somebody wants to make us rich and famous.
This is knockout.
You keep it. You three can try it.
Oh, come on, don't give me that. Are you chuffed after one gig?
Yeah, of course I'm chuffed.
Well, why not then?
Look, the Seymour Trust, the Ron Harding Trust, they're all the same. It's just that he's got better notepaper, that's all.
Look, don't let that old sod get to you. This is a real chance.
Look, he's just Ron Hardy with another name, that's all. They're all 10% merchants. They're all bloody villains. I can live without all that.
Can I ask about your performance, Noddy? Because it is such good acting. And I'm slightly spoiler here, but at the end, there's a moment you just look at Tom Conti and you go, it's all over. And I just thought, how old were you at the time to be giving this amazing world-weary performance?
29.
Yeah, sort of.
29,
yeah.
I was the same age as you.
We hadn't acted.
No.
Richard took our personalities that he'd learnt about on the road with us, and he basically used those personalities as our personalities in the film. It's the only way we could have got through it.
They did an amazing job. I mean, you were playing yourselves, but that still was not easy.
It wasn't easy.
No, they did a remarkable job, I think, and it's matured really quite well as a movie.
I think it stands up the test of time, especially 50 years on.
Well, tell me about the fact that it has become a cult classic. You said how it was a commercial and a critical failure at the time. How does it feel knowing that its reputation has grown over the years?
I love it.
Good.
I think it's great because, well, it keeps the band's name afloat for one thing, but as a work of movie making, I think Richard deserves the big chunk of the credit. What it's got is a feel about it. It shows a rock and roll band like ourselves. We grew up on a council estate. We eventually got success after years and years of struggle. We get success, and then it shows the pitfalls of success.
Can I ask, Noddy, does the film in any way reflect your experience of success?
Yes, not at the time it didn't, but now, looking back on it, it was pretty much a mirror image of what has gone on in all of our lives as a band.
How?
I always say, these days now, all these years on, 5 things split up a band. They are egos, they are money, they are drink and drugs, they are women, and there are musical differences. And in Slade's case, it was all 5.
You'll know that Slade have a particular association in this country with the joy of Christmas. And I wonder...
No, really?
Write a song for Christmas, especially.
And I wonder what you make of that and the fact that you are part of kind of British Christmas culture now.
Well, I love it. I love the fact that we have got a classic Christmas record. Of course, there's downsides to having a record that's famous. That is 52 years old now, that record.
What's the royalties like?
And we never expected when we bought that out in 73 that it would be lasting all this time.
Is it a pension?
It is a pension plan, actually.
I looked up today to see how much you earned from it.
Really?
Not too bad.
Okay. And it is a pension plan, which we never realised at the time that it would be. But the thing is, it's at the detriment of other songs we did. People today mainly just think of us as a one-hit wonder. We had 40 other hit records.
And there was a whole rediscovery of your music through Britpop. I mean, Oasis were huge champions. They covered Come On and Feel the Noise.
It really resurged our catalogue when Oasis covered Come On Feel the Noise. But it had its ups and downs, the Christmas record. I can't go out at Christmas time shopping because whatever store I go in, it's playing there. Now, there is not one day goes by generally in the year when somebody doesn't shout at me, "It's Christmas," at the top of their voice. And they, in November and December, it's 50 times a day. But it's good to have that because it does put a smile on people's faces. Best day's work we ever did. A few more
Took you
of
a
them.
day to write that? I'm amazed.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
It did. It only took a day to write it, yeah.
Noddy Holder and director Richard Loncraine. Their film Slade In Flame is back in cinemas from Friday, and they point out in more cinemas than on its original release. And the new 4K restoration will be on BFI, Blu-ray and DVD from May the 19th. It's certificate 12A.